Well, welcome to our session today about helping to prepare students for Allstate auditions. My name is Lee Callisted. I'm going to start this out by introducing my colleague, Dr. Cruz. And as I just want to let you know that Dr. Cruz comes this with more of an international background. She's a cello performer, and until was hired away out of her classroom recently, and in 2014, I believe, she was orchestra director in the Austin Public Schools in Texas. My background is a saxophone performer, and my career was education as a band and choir director. And both of us were hired out of our classrooms, and now we work with educators to incorporate technology in their music programs. So because we had been using Smart Music and Finale extensively, and that background combined with our team of clinicians, and with the feedback that we get from you, we've put together different trainings, clinics, conventions, e-learnings, and now webinars. So the session information that Vaughn is going to share today will be based on the new Smart Music, which is our web-based platform for Smart Music and its classroom pricing. However, everything that she's doing, you can also do in the classic Smart Music. That's the computer application. You can see the icon for that on the left. So whichever one you're using today, everything that Giovanna is talking about applies. And Giovanna, let's get started.
All right, well, Lee, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, everybody, for joining in today, this webinar. So the format of this will be, we'll be sharing the presentation that you see on screen, and then there'll be a couple of videos to complement it. Today's format, or outline rather, will be, well, first of all, based on my past experience as an orchestra director in Texas. So I will talk about the audition process as it happens in Texas, which may or may not be similar to what it is like in your state, but some of the same things can probably apply. So I plan on first discussing how the process works down here in Texas, and then we'll talk about some considerations regarding your own program, doing a little reality check, then creating an environment where all the students can learn something, using Smart Music to help your students learn the music that is required for those Allstate auditions, and then lastly, debriefing and recognizing the students for their hard work. So the Texas example. As Lee mentioned, I was an orchestra director here. I did that for 7 years. And I'm going to talk about both the vocal and the instrumental process. I'll start with the instrumental process because they're a little bit different. So TMEA is our State Music Educators Association, and it's the one that rules the entire Allstate process. So it's a pretty standard, both process and the materials used for it in Texas. Everybody is doing the same thing. Typically what happens for the instrumental programs is that the TMEA posts the names of the etude books at some time in April, I think it is, on their website. And then they release what the actual etudes are going to be later in the year. So the orchestra division gets the actual etude numbers on at the end of May, and then the band gets them in July. If there's any errata information, because there's some mistakes in the edition or whatever, that's posted on the website as well. So once the teachers are aware of what the edition material is going to be, they probably get a hold of it and share it with their students, who then begin practicing it. Again, depending on the division, there may be more or fewer rounds of auditions. For example, I was in Region 18, which is basically the Austin area and a little bit of Round Rock. And I guess the area was relatively small. So for the orchestra division, we only had 2 rounds, the region round and then the state round. The band programs in that same region where I am were much larger, so they had to go through region, pre-area, area, and lastly state. So depending on what your division is down here, you have you have 2 or more rounds. Also, in the orchestra division down here, the region round was in person and the state round was taped. The band does all of their auditions live. So there's a little bit of a difference in there. The choral process is a little bit different. And so TMEA again releases, in this case, the names and publishers of the pieces that were selected for the Allstate ensembles for the following year. That information gets released in May. And then Educational Enterprises Recording Company records the music with license from the publishers and sells it to schools. So the students and the teachers can purchase these recordings to use them to help them practice. The students are going to rehearse for the auditions with a voice CD, and then there's also a separate piano CD. And then from that piano CD, tracks are used to create the cuts. And then again, because choral programs tend to be rather large, there's also 4 levels of auditions. So that's sort of how the process works in Texas. We have a clinician who lives in Missouri, and she shared what the Allstate choral audition process is in Missouri, which is, you're going to see, quite different from Texas. So whereas down here it's a 2 to 4 stage process, down in Missouri it's a 2-level. So there's a district audition level first, and then a state audition. And so the district level auditions take place first, early in the school year, and they have a sight singing component, which is evaluated by 1 judge, and then they have a solo component, which is evaluated by 3 judges. So you can see here that right off the bat is very different from the way it's done in Texas. And I would anticipate that wherever you guys are, your process may be different from either of these 2 examples. In any case, at the district level in Missouri, then the top scoring students are selected for the district choir, and then the top of those district students are advanced to the state round. Then comes the second phase of this auditioning process, which happens about 6 weeks later. And so it's a blind audition. There's 3 judges. And at this point, the students are going to sing a prepared choral piece, and they're going to sing it with accompaniment. It's sort of like a music -1 environment where they sing, say, an SATB part, and if they're the soprano voice is missing, but all the other 3 are there. So the judges are going to listen to this performance and judge it, and then they're going to combine the scores from the district level audition with the scores from the state level, and then the highest scoring students are the ones selected for the all-state choirs. So it's time for Allstate, and you have to think about, oh, how am I going to do this? How many students am I going to send? What is this going to work like? Et cetera, et cetera. So you have to analyze your program. And some of those things that you have to think about are, well, how many students do I have? How many faculty are there to teach those students? The material required for auditions. If you have a small program, it may be easier for you to teach each and every one of those kids, whether individually or in small groups or perhaps with the whole class, what the required material is. But if you have a really large program and you have only 1 director, like was my case, then things become a little bit more complicated because you don't just simply, there aren't enough hours in the day, right? So those are some things that you need to think about. What is the availability of private lessons? Are all the students taking private lessons? Are some of them taking private lessons? Are none of them taking private lessons? And if so, then what do you do? Then do you have the ability to pull students out from other classes to do small group lessons? I know we have another clinician that lives in New York State, and he has the ability to do pull-out lessons, so he can actually differentiate instruction in groups of 4 or 5 students and teach the concepts that those students need to be able to succeed, but that's not every program. Do you have the ability to bring in clinicians to help you teach those instruments that perhaps you're not all that proficient at? So I am a cellist, and I could demonstrate all state etudes no problem on cello, and I could do an okay job on the bass, but man, put me in front of a violin or a viola, and I was actually doing my students a disservice. So can you hire someone, instrumentalist, to come and help you with those instruments that perhaps you cannot play as well? And I think, Lee, you had a story to share about that.
Well, when I was teaching, I was also kind of that lone director that had to figure out ways to get things done. And so what happened for me is I did hire in a lot of uh, professional musicians that were private teachers, and we would bring them into the school. What I didn't realize at first is school districts may have some really evolving policies, who walks through their doors and who talks to their students. So what started out was just very friendly, come in and teach. After a few years, our school district developed background checks and photo IDs and very stringent check-in policies. So if you're going to work with bringing anyone in to work with your students, you really need to start with the administration and make sure that you know what to expect to bring them in. And so that was kind of a surprise to me that outsiders were not viewed as friendly. And once they got all their certification done, it was great. And I could demonstrate on a couple instruments very well and a few not so well, and others it was just get someone in that can really teach the instrument. So but that was the lesson I learned, is check with administration of who's walking in the door and talking to your kids.
Yes, and then that's a perfect segue into the next bullet point, which is what are the expectations that your district has for you, your fine arts director, or perhaps your assistant principal or the principal of your school? Do they expect that you will send a small group of students to contests? Do they care about the contest? Do they want you to send a large group of students to the contest? You know, does your actual professional evaluation have anything to do with whether or not you send students? And then beyond that, are they then providing you with the resources so that you can meet those expectations, right? So that's part of what is your program like. And then lastly, what is your philosophy about Allstate auditions? You know, do you make it mandatory for all your students? Is it voluntary just for those that are highly motivated and want to do it? Do you highly encourage kids to do it, or do you just simply not care about it, don't make it participate? So when I first confronted this situation, there was an expectation that we had to send lots of students to contest. And I looked at my program and I was like, well, how am I exactly going to do that? You know, 120 some students and just one director. And so my first option was, look, I'll just make it mandatory to the top ensemble. And so I made the music available to them, and then I sent them. And well, that didn't go that well, right? Because there were some kids that were resistant to doing it. There were some kids that were motivated. There were some other kids that wanted to do it but didn't really have the tools, and I just didn't have a whole system in place to really help them. So some of the things that I'm going to discuss here sort of evolved out of the need to be able to send a few more students, but at the same time provide the supports necessary so that they could have a certain degree of success in going to these auditions. So after you have looked at all of these considerations regarding your program, it's time for a little reality check, right? The image that you see on screen is probably what some of those etudes or excerpts or pieces that are sung or played at Allstate ensembles look like to many of your kids, right? So if you don't have the skills to see that, you're like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? So definitely the audition material has a high level of difficulty for many of the kids. Then you have the reality that your students have different levels of ability. And if they're not taking private lessons, then you clearly see those gaps in there. You also have students that play different instruments. So we come to the issue of how do I organize them so I can teach, you know, the etude for horn while I also have oboes that are wanting to go, and then the trumpets have something different, and the clarinets yet have something different, and it's just me and all of those kids with all of those instruments. And then of course there's the matter of time, right? We all want the day to have like 40 hours, but the reality is it only has 24, and we have work and we have families, and we're trying to balance all of those things. And sending kids to contests is a tremendous effort on your part and on their part as well. So how do you balance all of those things and try to provide students with an environment that is the right environment for them to be able to learn something, right? How do I do this? It looks like a super daunting task. So it's going to require some planning, and here are just some ideas. I don't pretend to be, the know-all, end-all, be-all of audition preparation. These are just simply some ideas that evolved out of my own experience. So one idea is to incorporate some elements of the technique or musicality necessary for those etudes or excerpts into your warm-up routine. Now, this requires planning and organization, clearly, and as well as the need for rotating by instrument or by etude or by excerpt, because if you try to address all the items for all the instruments in every rehearsal, you're probably not going to get anything else done. The good thing, or the silver lining, is that if in your state the audition materials are released or published early on, say like before the school year is out, then you have some time during the summer to think about these things and come up with warm-up exercises that probably address some of these items. So for example, let's say that your horns have an etude where there's a lot of up and down arpeggios. So you can probably design a little warm-up where you address that. Or maybe there's a difficult rhythm that keeps coming back in the clarinet etude. You can do, the same thing, do a little rhythm exercise. There's a lot of shifting from first to fifth position on the violin etudes, same thing. So rotate it by instrument, include it in your warm-up, do a little bit every day, rotate it by instrument, and then move on. Another thing that you can do is differentiate the instruction and give all an opportunity to achieve at their current level. So if you have pull-out lessons, this is great because, like I was saying, our colleague and clinician and friend Kevin in New York, he has the ability to pull students according to their different needs and address specific issues that he has already assessed through other means, in the music. So if they're having trouble with 6/8 meter, he pulls all those students together and does a mini lesson addressing that. So he could do the same thing by pulling all the clarinets together or pulling all the violins together and so on and so forth. In other cases, like it was mine, I didn't have the ability to pull students from class. So I would organize sectionals after school by instrument. So for example, Mondays, we're going to have from 4 to 5 the violin etude. On Tuesday it'll be the viola, on Wednesday it'll be the cello, and on Friday it'll be the bass, or whatever. You could do something like that. And then also you can help yourself with the use of technology, and this is sort of where smart music comes in. Here's another idea: incentivize your students. How can you do this? Well, with Letterman Points. So if they are used to, at some point during their high school career, say getting that coveted jacket, that they all want, and in our case, for their students to be able to get that jacket, they had to obtain a certain number of points, which they gained by participating in certain music activities. So you could make, participation in these auditions a high number of points so that they can get their jacket faster. For example, you could create an honor chart, you could have some prizes, etc. So what you see there, all those medals that you see, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and diamond, what that is sort of a level of achievement chart that we developed. And I have to say, I didn't invent it. There was another teacher in town from another school in a neighboring district that had a completely different socioeconomic situation as mine, but he was sending lots of students to these auditions, and the kids were doing great. Of course, the majority of them were taking private lessons, and it was phenomenal. But then he also at some point shared that he had this system of incentives in place to help the kids achieve at their own level. So bronze, for example, was for those students who decided to play just a portion of the etude at any tempo. Then silver was for those who decided to play the region cut at any tempo. And then gold was playing the region cut at the prescribed tempo and then taking the audition. Platinum was playing the region cut at the prescribed tempo, taking the audition and making it to the region level orchestra or band or whatever. And then Diamond was playing the entire etude at the prescribed tempo, taking the audition and advancing to state. So you can, that way you can sort of build opportunities for all the kids to try to access the material and do what they can and still be recognized, and you don't have to tie it to a grade or anything like that. So then another thing is share that plan and the incentives with the students and the parents and the administrators so that you're all on the same page and everybody knows what the expectation is. And meet individually or in small groups to discuss with the students and set the achievement goals.
Just want to jump in. So when I look at the bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, it looks to me like if you're gold, platinum, diamond, those all included going to the actual contest and getting some kind of result. But if you were bronze and silver, how did those students perform? What was their opportunity so you knew what they had done? Because they were probably just getting started.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that sort of ties in with what comes next, which was the use of smart music to help the students prepare the material. So I put all the material in smart music and I sent them assignments and they had a due date. So if they were not going to the audition, they had to complete the assignment at whatever level we decided together, and it had to be completed by that date. And so that was sort of their accountability level. I think I also required that they had to be present at a minimum number of sectionals after school so that I could also check in with them and explain or demonstrate any technique that they were having trouble with. It's not like I just sent the assignments and said, okay, go work. I did have some sessions where we worked on it together.
I was a little bit, as I look back on it, probably a little, sneaky on mine. I required all the students to perform and they could choose to go to contest or the audition, or they could choose to perform in front of the entire ensemble. And that was quite fearful for most to think about even performing for all their peers. So over time, we had a high percentage of kids that would rather go and do an audition for a judge in a room than to put their, just to get in front of their peers. Over time, the culture changed. And instead of pulling teeth to get people to go to those events, it became the normal thing. It was expected you to do that. And in fact, if you didn't think you're going to do it, now the band was kind of looking at you like, well, what's wrong with you? Because this is what we do. So it may take years to develop that culture. But anyway, that was another approach to it.
So using smart music to help students learn the music. When I came, so I started using smart music, I think it was in 2010, and I had been using it already for a number of years just to work on our concert repertoire and on exercises and technique and method books and all of that. And I knew that smart music had the capability of uploading your own finale created files into it. So it occurred to me one year when I was thinking about how to turn around this whole culture of you have to go do the audition, and the kids were like, no, I don't know, I can't do it, I don't have the skills. I was thinking, well, if we've been using smart music to prepare for concert and things have been useful and they've been going well that way, what's preventing me from creating some files with these etudes and things that they have to prepare for the audition and putting them in smart music to help them with the learning? So one summer, I spent a considerable amount of time because I wasn't that proficient with finale at the time, just entering the notes and the rhythms for the etudes. So that one year I did all the etudes for violin, viola, cello, and bass, and then put them in smart music and send them out to the kids. Probably the process wasn't as refined as I've been talking about today because that took a couple years to get to that point. And then I met another teacher who was doing the same thing, and we're like, oh, let's just divide and conquer. So I did the lower strings and he did the upper strings for the following year, and then we put them in finale and devised this whole process. So when I did it, it was in the classic Smart Music. What I'm going to show you here today is in the new Smart Music, which is the web-based, but basically you can do it with either, right? So if you're using the classic Smart Music, you're going to create an SMP file. If you're using the new Smart Music, you're going to export your files as music XML. And then you're going to upload those files into the Smart Music. In Classic, it would be one file per etude. And so when you assign it out, you would have one assignment or one column, so to speak, in your gradebook per etude, right? In your class. So it could get pretty wide pretty quickly. In the new Smart Music, you can assemble, so to speak, a book where all the etudes for all the instruments are assembled in the same book. So in your gradebook, it's a little bit cleaner because you're just going to see one assignment. Does that make sense? So let me show you this little video here, which explains the process. So it starts with just the files of multiple etudes, right? So you create your audition material in there. And as you can see, there are several different ones. And what I did, or what you can do in the new Smart Music, is you put all of those files in the same folder. And then under the file menu, you're going to click Export. And then you're going to say Translate Folder to Music XML. And what Finale is going to do is it's going to batch process all of those files at once and put them in that same folder. So what you end up with is a folder where you have both the Finale file and the XML file together. Does that make sense? Then you go over to your new Smart Music platform and scroll all the way to the bottom to where it says My Recently Uploaded Content, and you're going to tell it Upload New Content. And you're going to get to a window where you're going to name your book. So in this case, it's going to be called Allstate Material 2017, and it's exercises. And here's where I say that you can create one book with, so to speak, movements. So etude 1 is one movement, and you're going to have all the different instrument parts. Etude 2 is another movement, and so on. Then you can drag and drop all your XML files into here, or you can use your Finder window to select the etudes. So because there's 2 etudes per instrument, I selected the first one of each instrument to go under the etude 1 movement, so to speak. And as soon as the music shows on screen, you get a little drop-down menu where you get to select, or verify rather, the instrument for which it's written. And then what you see here is just me uploading the second etude to build sort of the second movement in this book. Okay, you actually can even hear right then and there what it sounds like. Okay, so once you're done, you're going to click that blue arrow going forward. It's going to show you what your book looks like, and then you're basically done. Okay. All right, so Michael was asking, how do we put Finale created content into the new Smart Music? The new Smart Music seems much more difficult than the classic. Will it get better? Well, I hope that this video, although fast, showed you that it's not that difficult, and you can easily just import your music XML file.
And Giovanna, I just want to chime in on that too, because for years I was making the SMP files, they're called, for classic Smart Music out of Finale. And when I started the music XML process out of Finale, I just had to try it a couple times, and it really works just as easily as Finale. The difference right now might be 2 things. One is you can use any notation program that puts out music XML, which is about every notation program, because that's the format that's going into new Smart Music. So that opens up for all those people that are using other notation software. The other thing is we are in stage 1 of the process of creating Smart Music files for new, and we want to get it in, get it working. So right now you can drag and drop several parts at once, and each part will play and be assigned individually. The next generation of that is in development, and with that it'll be where you can have the melody part and the accompaniment all generated in that same process. So stay tuned, because over the next few months they'll add that second round of how to make your Smart Music files for new. But the other thing too, at the end, I'm sure Giovanna is going to mention about some resources for training. But if you go to makemusic.com, there's Finale e-learning courses that do step-by-step on this. And we also have, there you can see that we have Smart Music e-learning courses that are free that go through all these things step-by-step. And Giovanna and I put those courses together. So that's my little interruption, Giovanna. Now I'm back out of there.
All right. So once you have your files created and uploaded, then it's time for you to create those assignments so that you can help your students. How do you want to do this? Well, in my opinion, I think you would want to first do a limited number of measures at a time. So it wasn't helpful for me to create the files and then just send the whole thing out to kids and say, practice. Well, it's not any different from just giving them the sheet music and telling them to practice. So the beauty of Smart Music is that you can select just a few measures, slow down the tempo and say, I want you to practice this, and submit it when you can play through without mistakes at, say, half the tempo, and then you can gradually increase it, right? So use a slower tempo at first. There's a feature in here that allows you to choose any tempo. So if you have students with less skills, or they're younger students, they're not as developed as your older students, and they want to give this a try, or they want to be at the bronze level, for example, just allow them to do at any tempo, as long as their sense of pulse and in the rhythm and all of that is consistent and accurate. Then you can gradually add measures, or you could do, for week 1 is the first 10 measures, for week 2 is the next 10 measures, and for week 3 is the next 10 measures, and so on and so forth. Once a significant portion of the etude or the excerpt has been learned, then increase the minimum tempo or increase the required tempo. And then check in and provide feedback as needed. And lastly, set a deadline. You probably want that deadline to be no later than the date of the audition, so that those kids who are auditioning have the same amount of time as those who are not, but want to try to achieve at the lower medal level. Does that make sense? So this next video is going to walk through that assignment process. So once you have uploaded that video, the material, it's going to show up under the uploaded content. There's your book, and you're going to click assign, and then select which etude it would be. And then you're going to make this a custom assignment, because you want to say exactly what measures and at what tempo, etc. you want to set this assignment. So you're going to see the different parts. The default is that the entire thing is selected, but you can, down there on the right, decide, no, I don't want you to go all the way. I just want you to go till the end of measure 6, or till the third beat of measure 6. And then you can change the tempo. You can choose from exactly a tempo, any tempo, or at least a given tempo. And then you would repeat the process with all the other parts. Change, the location, the amount of measures that you want them to work on. You can actually type in some instructions, and you can hear what the etude should sound like. So that's too fast, right? For the first assignment, you probably want to slow it down. And in this case, these kids, the bass players, can go at least 60. So you would say, okay, do it at least 60. And then you continue the same process with all the other parts until you have your assignment set up the way you want it. And then notice that on the left side of the screen, where you see each part, they either have a green dot, or perhaps we missed it, an orange dot. By default, the dot is orange, and as soon as you verify your part and you set it up the way you want it, it turns green. When you're done, you're blue. Let me backtrack a little bit. There's a blue arrow back here. Just a second. Okay, there's a blue arrow up there, which moves you forward to the actual scheduler. And here you are going to decide how you want to grade it. So let's say that you just want the red and green note feedback. so that it's a quick grading thing, even though you may not decide to actually issue a grade for them in your district gradebook, but just for the purposes of feedback, you may want to select that. And then you would check in periodically and perhaps write some comments and give them some written feedback in their assignments so that they know what they're doing well and what they need to continue to work on. So once you select your students and the due dates, the assignment shows up in your gradebook. And like I said, because all the different etudes are in the same book, you just see one column there.
Cool. And just to throw this in there, the little video clip you just saw was not intended to be a step-by-step how-to. It's just showing the process real quickly. But that's kind of, if you took that in little chunks, did it slow, put arrows, put written directions, and did it at a pace you could pause and do it your own pace, that would be like the e-learning courses we've done. So everything that we're talking about, we do have the little video clips, the step-by-step, and you just pause it and have another sip of coffee when you want. So I think it's the process to make these things has become really, really easy to do. I want to throw in, we had a question from John, and this question comes up is a great question, and it never has a great answer. Is any copyright concerns with creating XML files? And so I guess my standard answer to that is yes. Just the same as if you're using classic smart music. Generally, if you purchase the music for all students, it's pretty common practice to be able to share practice files because those can't be escaping and copied and handed out to other people anyway. However, we never have any say on that. That's the publisher has the final say on what is proper and what isn't. But yep, you have to watch your P's and Q's when it comes to any time you're using someone else's music. Giovanna?
All right. We also have our clinician Laura Vaughn's preparation secrets this is sort of her secret sauce for helping her vocal students succeed at Allstate choir auditions. And I think, Lee, you were going to share this slide with our attendees.
Yeah, I've known Giovanna, I've known Laura for many years, and we've shared clinics in different states. And her vocal clinics are always packed, and her students are always getting top awards. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to pick her brain on just how she does that, because it seems kind of magical. Turns out it's just good planning. In Missouri, as Giovanna mentioned earlier, the sight singing exam for the Allstate choir audition is done in the fall, September, maybe as late as October. It's no time to really get ready then. So what she does is she sends sight singing assignments all year round and actually ramps them up during the summertime. Now she is a private instructor, but she works in conjunction with different school music programs so that there's a good synergy there. Then of course she listens to her solos, she gives them the critiques. And this I think is really good, the next bullet point. She requires her students to sing live for her several times and make that, sorry about that, make her the audition process with her and recreate that stress you might have when you get in a judging experience. And then based on what they've done, then she isolates those rhythmic and interval situations the kids are struggling with. She creates smart music assignments and she drilled these things with them so they really learn how to learn. And then John mentioned that there's a sort of music -1 thing going on in Missouri where a singer would be required to sing their part to software that is performing the other 3 parts in an SAT-B setting. She goes ahead and makes those files and they practice with it. So they walk in and they just own the joint. They are very comfortable with sight singing, doing stuff in choral or etudes on the spot, because that's a way of doing business all the time. And she was a little modest. She says they've done extremely well being chosen for Allstate choir. They just dominated. So, but what she does, it's kind of a year-round plan, and it's a little bit of work all the time, setting the expectation that kids learn how to sight sing, and it's not that scary then when they go in and stand in front of a judge. So, his approach to it.
Yeah, so as you can see, there's lots of different considerations, and then there's some resources, smart music being one of them. We also wanted to share some additional resources to help your students learn the music. Well, first of all, always check with your state music educators association, because they probably put out some resources or recordings or links or materials to help you help your students learn. You can also go to YouTube and do a search for the specific material for your state. And these are just a couple things that I found yesterday when I was looking for resources. This Joshua Roman is a cellist who did a project of recording all 40 of the Popper high school etudes for cello, which are standard literature for cellists. And when the book says high school, is not high school as in, you know, K through 12, it's like the advanced exercises. And so doing a project of recording all 40 is extremely challenging, and he did that, and the videos are on YouTube. And although the students could not slow down these videos to see all the intricacies of the technique and the performance and whatnot, at least they can get an idea of what it's supposed to sound like, so they can watch that on YouTube. If you do a search for the TMEA Texas All-State Choir Audition for this year, you're going to find some recordings there. There's also some professors at some colleges and universities that create videos, pedagogical videos of how to work on the specific etudes with the students. So just do a search, and I'm sure you'll find lots of resources. Here's another free resource. MacPhail Center for Music is sort of a school of music in the Minneapolis area, and you can see the web address right there at the top. If you go there, the red box that you can see sort of in the middle right of your screen has student resources for that include the Allstate Etude tutorial. So there's videos of some of the faculty that teach at MacPhail playing the etudes and going through the material. Of course, these would be specific to Minnesota, but you know, maybe you live in Minnesota, or maybe some of the same material is what's required in your state. This is another resource, is a paid one and directed to orchestra directors. It was created by Wendy Devaney here in Texas, and again, it's video tutorials and lots of resources for helping students learn not just the all-state etudes, but it also has video tutorials on frequently performed orchestra music down here in Texas. So definitely check it out if you're an orchestra teacher. And just like that, there's a lot of other resources. So we're coming to the last part of our webinar, and after you've done all of this, what's next, right? So it's time to debrief and recognize the hard work of your students. So make sure and meet with your students to deconstruct the process and reflect on their learning. So what did they learn from all of this? Did they get better? Did they not get better? Did they do things incrementally? Did they wait till the very end and cram? You know, what could they have done differently to change the outcome? Also gather feedback on the process, the way that you planned it, to see what improvements you can have the following year. Don't forget to publicly recognize all of the kids who participated in the challenge, as well as their achievements. So if the auditions take place before your fall concert, make sure to recognize the kids at the fall concert, get the parents to applaud them. If your auditions are after the fall concert, then don't forget to do that at your winter concert. They're probably gonna be shy, but they're gonna love the recognition from the parents, and the parents are gonna love that you're recognizing them as well. Give them awards. So if in your incentives you plan certain prizes, or you did an honor chart, or whatever you did, you know, honor your word and give those awards out to the students. And then lastly, celebrate that the process is over until next year, right? It's a lot of work for you and for your students, and it's time to celebrate it. So with that, I'm sure that you guys have some questions, and in addition to the ones that were asked and answered already, we can open it up for some more. Lee, are there any more questions?
I don't have any coming in just yet, but while we're seeing if somebody has the last question. One thing that I realized over the years is that when you go to a different district or you're a new teacher, you really need to check out what is the calendar really like, because there's standardized testing days, there's homecoming, there's other things that are on the schedule that really interrupt everybody's learning in your schedule. So what looks like you have 2 or 3 months to prepare might actually be half of that time certain times a year. So you really have to check with others and get the real scoop on that.
So again, if you're using the new Smart Music and you want some help on how to do certain things, make sure to check out the help button at the top point. It's pointed to with a arrow. When you do that, you're going to be taken to our Music Help Center, Smart Music Help Center, where there's lots of different articles, both for students and for educators, as well as a community where you could ask other teachers what it is that they do. This is a picture of our website, and on our website, circle there with or enclosed in that orange rectangle, there are some menus. You might not be able to read them, but it says features, pricing, training, blog, login, and classic Smart Music. We have training available, more in depth. And so if you click on where it says training, you would come to this page where you can see our different options. One of them is e-learning, that Lee has referred to that a couple times already. So we have self-paced courses that give you a certificate and clock hours of continuing education. The Smart Music courses are free. We have them available for both the new Smart Music, which is the online web-based platform that we've been talking about today. And we also have courses for classic Smart Music, the software that has existed for about 15 years. All of those are free, okay? So all you have to do is fill out this form that you would be prompted to when you click on the website. If you want to learn more about Finale, we also have some courses there for a nominal fee. They're available on the finalemusic.com website, and you go, I think that there's a training tab. So in any case, you can learn at your own pace. There's videos that you can slow down, stop, speed up, etc. We are also doing a series of free webinars during the months of September and October, and you can see the schedule on screen. This is the second one in September. The first one was last week. It was on updates that we have included in the new Smart Music. Next week, we're doing one with Asa Burke, another Texas educator, about sight reading. And then we have other great people such as Bruce Pearson on a purposeful warm-up. We're going to have Gordon Goodwin, Marcia Neal, and Dr. Tim. So hope to really bring some great content and be inspirational for all of you guys. So Lee, if there aren't any other questions, I think we can say our goodbyes and thank everybody for coming.